So I actually started Northeastern as an anthropology major, not as a geoscience major. And one of the things that got me to switch from anthro to geosciences was actually geosciences had better mentors. The professors were able to inspire students in the classroom, and then out of the classroom engage them in all sorts of creative ideas and what sorts of fun things you can do with geology in terms of the realm of research as well as applied. And so at Northeastern, I did get good mentorship in terms of classes. Northeastern, I don't know if any of you know, is known for its co-op program. Its goal is experiential education. And I really took advantage of that. Right after my freshman year, I did study abroad in Australia. That's when I realized, after taking some archaeology courses, that I was not as interested in anthropology as I initially thought I was, that I was a lot more interested in geology. I came back to Northeastern for my sophomore year, and I formally joined the Geosciences program. And then after my sophomore year, I did an internship at Florissant Fossil Beds National Monument in Florissant, Colorado. It was that summer that really kind of focused me in terms of, do I really want to do geology? What aspect of geology? I always knew I liked fossils, but going to Florissant and actually doing it really made me realize I love this. At Florissant, I happened to meet a graduate student, a PhD student of University of Arizona, Dina Smith, who is also a minority. And Florissant was one of her field locations for her dissertation, and she kind of took me under her wing as an up-and-coming minority geosciences student. She helped mentor me in terms of preparing for graduate school, what sorts of things, how to look for funding, things like that. But more importantly, she introduced me to her advisor, Carl Flessa, who is now my advisor. I met Carl that same summer. He came out on a vacation to visit the park because he had never gone to Florissant before. And I got to meet with him. And at the time, I was all about snails. I thought gastropods were the coolest organisms on the face of the planet. And Carl mainly deals with bivalves. So we were two mollusk people, and we kind of put our heads together and oohed and awed about how great mollusks are and how everything else is not as cool. And he gave a talk at Florissant on the research that him and his lab was conducting. And at the time, I didn't know anything about who's who. I didn't know who Carl was. I had no idea that he was a very important man in the realm of paleo. I was your average ignorant sophomore. And all I knew was that he did something really cool that I liked. He used fossils to study, or he used paleontological techniques to study conservation issues. And I thought that that was really cool because that was taking two things that I really liked and putting them together. And so I was really inspired by what his lab was doing. I knew that I learned through Dina that he was a good mentor. That following fall, he flew me out to Tucson. So I was the fall of my junior year. He flew me out to Tucson, and him, along with the rest of his graduate students and some of his postdocs, we went down to the Delta, where I got to spend a field season, 4 or 5 days out in the field of the Delta, and I got to see how they do what they do, and got to really intimately talk with each one of his graduate students and one of his postdocs about what they do in his lab, how they do it, how they like working in his lab. And one of the things that I took away with is how many great things are coming out of his lab, and what a family his lab was, and how they all really liked working with him, and that they all felt that they were getting the support that they needed. And that became really important to me because Northeastern Geology was not a research department. We did not have a graduate program, and we only had 8 professors that really did not conduct research. It was a teaching department, which was great because I have a very solid background. My coursework is phenomenal because that was their primary responsibility, but I didn't have any research potential at Northeastern. I did you know, take on several other internships before I graduated, but in terms of being in a lab and actually conducting a senior thesis where I presented or published, I had not had that opportunity. So when it came time to apply to graduate school, not even so much that I didn't feel competitive in terms of I didn't feel like graduate schools wouldn't accept me. I kind of felt that graduate schools would accept me. I did have internships. I had made some connections. I had gone to GSA conferences while I was an undergraduate. My grades were pretty good. I was happy with my background and my record. But I was afraid to join a lab where, you know, that was very competitive in terms of research when I hadn't had any research before. And so when I was looking at graduate schools to apply to, I felt like none of them really beat what I knew I could get at University of Arizona, which was I knew I can get a good mentor. You know, I felt like I initially when I was applying to graduate school, I applied for master's. Once I became part of Carl's lab, I actually switched from master's to PhD, so I'm currently in my PhD. But at the time, I knew that it's a master's. I kind of felt like I had a lot of interest in paleontology. No matter what I did, I knew I'd be happy with. I was more interested in getting some really good research experience, and to do that I needed a good mentor because I hadn't had any previously. And so I knew that I could get very good mentoring from Carl. I knew him one-on-one as a person because I had, you know, gone out into the field with him. I knew every single one of his graduate students and knew exactly what they thought of him. And so I knew he was someone I can trust to be a good mentor to me with no experience. So I actually only applied to one university, and that was University of Arizona. I did not apply to any other graduate school. Once I started University of Arizona, I felt really comfortable in the lab. My lab really is a family. We really do take care of each other, and there's so much exciting stuff going on. I love the fact that Carl's lab always has undergraduates in it, you know. Being that I was an undergraduate that didn't get to, you know, do a lot of research, I feel it's just really great to have undergraduates in your lab and provide them with that opportunity, as well as he always has a certain level of minorities and women, and I really like that. It's a very comfortable environment for me. And so I'm pretty happy with the mentoring at U of A, especially because it has been challenging. You know, being from the East Coast and being so far from my family, you know, issues have come up, and I've always known I could talk to Carl about them and that he understands, because he's also had many graduate students that were very close to their families, and he understands how that can affect a person. So, you know, I do have the Ford pre-doctoral fellowship. I did apply to NSF while I was applying to U of A, and it was Carl that told me about NSF. I had never heard about it before. And I applied to it when I was applying to U of A at the same time, but I was in Boston at the time, and I was actually working as an environmental consultant, so I didn't really have anyone to help me with my essay or my proposal, but it was a really good exercise. And so when I came to University of Arizona my first year, boy I applied to so many fellowships, so many grants, so many scholarships. He just threw them all at me, and I ate them up. I loved the idea that I was being challenged, and you know, the potential of being, you know, getting these prestigious fellowships, and luckily I was able to get one under his advisement, and lots and lots of editing, lots and lots of red ink. But so I would say that at Northeastern, as well as good as the mentoring was in terms of getting me into geosciences, getting me into graduate schools and potential funding opportunities, there really wasn't any there since they didn't do much research there. But because I had the previous relationship with Carl from back when I was a sophomore, junior, him along with Dina Smith were able to kind of guide me into what is out there for me. And so that's why I came to U of A, and that's how I got the Ford pre-doctoral fellowship. So I think the combo of not just a professorial level mentor, but also having a graduate student mentor me was really useful in my undergraduate.